And we are live. I would personally like to welcome everybody tuning into this week's episode of The Space Show, where we do weekly podcasts about everything space on 7 p.m. on Fridays. This week, we're going to be talking about Mars rovers, and to the best of my ability, I'm going to try and answer the most common questions asked on Google. I've got a list of a couple questions here, so let's get started. Our first question is, how do Mars rovers take pictures of itself? Now, the way they do this is they have an arm on top of them that has a camera on the end. We've all seen in pictures that it looks like the Mars rover has a floating camera taking pictures of it, but we know this is not true because it has an arm with a camera on the end. Now this camera takes multiple photos of its surroundings, including the Mars rover, and smushes them together. It almost fit in it. The camera automatically fades out the arm because it has multiple pictures of different angles, but it makes it look like one picture was taken. It's almost like the robot's taking a selfie. It's pretty cool, actually. Our second question we have on the list is, what do Mars rovers do exactly? Now, each Mars rover that was sent to Mars has its own specific mission. But let's take the Curiosity rover, for example. Its mission when it was sent to Mars is to discover geological formations and chemical abundances in rocks. Its main tool is the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer. This spectrometer has on it comes into contact with rocks and dumps alpha particles into the rock that come into contact with also X-rays that it dumps into the rock, and the spectrometer can detect certain chemicals or the amount of chemicals in these rocks. It can even detect elements, so this is also how it detects water or, for example, hmm, aluminum, I don't know, aluminum oxide. Let's go with that. Aluminum hydroxide. Let's go with that. It can detect things like that with the spectrometer because of what it does. Now these machines are very expensive though. It has a bunch of tools on it and they're all really expensive, but they're all for one main mission. Let's head to the next question. How do the Mars rovers communicate with Earth? Mars rovers have small satellites on the top of them that send signals to Earth. Now, these rovers are on another planet that's pretty far away if you're considering human distances, because it's not like a human can just walk 250 million miles if you wanted to. That's going to take a lot of time. So it's not like these rovers can just call their make a cell phone call back to the engineers and scientists on Earth because we don't have radio waves out there that can send those signals back. But back on Earth, NASA has Deep Dish Space Network, an international network of antennas that provide communications links between the scientists and engineers on Earth to the Mars exploration rovers. So it's a big group of satellite dishes that are pinpointing and pushing one signal out into space that can be detected by the rover. And even if the rover can't send a very good signal because it has a very tiny satellite on the top, these satellite dishes can still pick up the signal because they're so powerful. Let's go to our next question. Are Mars rovers remotely controlled? So a signal to get to Mars from Earth takes about 13 minutes, depending where it is on Mars you're trying to reach, or the way the Earth is turned. So it's not like the engineers and scientists at NASA can just hold a joystick and drive around the rover like it's a video game. They have to carefully plan and think out every move that this rover does if they were to control it from Earth. And they have to know that it won't tell it to do its next move for 13 minutes. So each move is only a set move, so it only does a small thing instead of ongoing. It's never like a looped move kind of thing. You know what I mean? Unless they actually turn on the robot's autonomous mode, where it has sensors on it that can detect where it's going, if there's rocks in the way, where it shouldn't go, that kind of thing. So, in a way, Mars rovers are remotely controlled, but for the most part, they aren't remotely controlled. Now, our next question is kind of a surprising one if you didn't know about it before. It's how fast do these Mars rovers move? Each Mars rover moves at different speeds, but that's okay because they're only there for a task. They're not there to move fast. They're not a sports car. But the Curiosity rover, for example, goes 0.14 kilometers per hour. That's 140 meters per hour. That's not that fast. But it's not like that's the robot's top speed too. It's not like the robot needs to go very fast. It's just there to do what it needs to do. But let's take the rover Spirit, for example. That robot can go 0.18 kilometers per hour or 180 meters an hour, which is not that fast, but it's still faster than the Curiosity rover. Let's go to our fifth question, or our sixth question, my bad. Have Mars rovers found liquid water on Mars? Through test of the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, the rovers have actually found water on Mars. Now, they can test this all they want, but they will never know for sure unless humans were to go there by themselves and actually examine this, or the rovers were to go over to the water and examine it. But the rovers cannot go over to the water and examine it even if it's not water, because through going through space and being built on Earth, the rovers or the spaceship that carried it there might have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Exposed to tiny microbes that might not be on Mars. Now, we don't want, in case there is liquid water there, we don't want to go and contaminate it with Earth-like microbes. Even how small they are, they still could mess up a possible ecosystem that is on Mars. So that's why they have found liquid water, but they will never know 100% because the rovers cannot go over and inspect it, and we don't have any humans there on Mars. If we go to our last question oh, no, it's not our last question, it's our second last, it's our seventh question. Is the Mars rover Spirit still working? The rover Spirit was launched in 2003 to explore Mars in search of signs of past life. It outlasted its 90-day mission, and then in 2009, the rover became embedded in a soft soil at a site called Troy, with only 5 working wheels to aid it in a rescue effort. After 5 months of testing and carefully planned maneuvers, NASA ended efforts to free the rover and eventually ended the mission on May 25th, 2011. So to answer the question, the rover is still active and it still tries to do all of its maneuvers, but it can't move and it can't come into new contact with what it would normally. So it still works, but it just can't move. It's stuck in the same spot. It's like it was stuck in kind of a quicksand. Now we go on to our last question, and that is, how many Mars rovers are on Mars currently? Now, there are currently 4 rovers there. There is the Mars Pathfinder, the Mars Curiosity rover, the Spirit rover, which we just talked about, and the Opportunity rover. Now, the Opportunity and Spirit rover were launched as kind of the same, they were part of the same mission, but they're 2 different robots. So to answer the question, there's 4 robots currently on Mars, 3 of which are active because the Pathfinder is now inactive, and I mean, I guess the Spirit's also inactive, but it still works. Yeah. Alright, everybody, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Space Show podcast, where we do weekly podcasts about everything space. Tune in next week to hear about our next topic that we're going to talk about, and I hope you all have a good evening.